Hello friends, welcome to Cloud and DevOps Learning. Today we are going to learn about AWS VPC. So VPC is Virtual Private Cloud. So this is specifically the concept from AWS side to give a full authority to the users to manage their own data center kind of concept. So yep, let's begin. So I'm logged into my AWS account. So we'll go to VPC section. Yep. So as you can see, I'm already having one VPC listed down there. So this is the default one. So whenever we create any AWS account, so we already have the default VPC for our account. Okay. So VPC is based on region level. So you can see top right corner that I'm in North Virginia region. So this VPC is residing in North Virginia region. So it will consist all the configuration for this specific region. So let's begin to create our VPC. So we'll click on create VPC. We'll select VPC only. Let give a name to my VPC. It's my VPC. Okay, so IPv4 CIDR manual input, that is fine. Yep. So the CIDR range. So this is the range of all the network part for our VPC. So we can see, for example, we have, let's give it 10.0.0.0 and let's give it to /26. So, yep. So you might be knowing about this CIDR range concepts and available IPs in this range as per the networking concept. But still, if you have some doubts, let's sort it out here quickly. So we have this range, for example, /26. So which means, so the available IP in this range equals equals 6, which stands for 64. So, which means uh, for our available these VPC CIDR ranges, we will be having 64 IPs. Okay, let's get back to our main console. So here, yep, this is fine. So yeah, tenancy. So tenancy describes the category of our infra provisioning in the actual data center. So if we have dedicated one, which means we have a dedicated host at particular data center uh, on AWS side, so which is a bit costly. So usually we choose the default one, and if we have the default one, then we are like free to use all the categories of the infra provisioning part, which is like shared or dedicated instance or dedicated host. So any of the three can be applicable here. So let's proceed with the default option here. Tags, you might be knowing that tags to provide some specific name to our resources. So yep, let's create the VPC now. So we can see the message. It's already created. So again, let's click on the main option, and now we can see that we have our VPC created with the name my VPC, and yeah, we have the specific ranges here, and yep, looks good. So now, so after creating the VPC, we have the next part to create the subnets. So subnets, You can see that we already have specific subnets here. So let's create our own subnet. So subnet is the categorizations of the available IPs. So here for the demo purpose, what we can do, we have one VPC created, one VPC, and now we'll create two subnets. Mm, let's do four subnets. So two private subnets, and next we will create two public subnets. Okay, so yep. Now let's create the subnets. So we'll click on create subnet and we'll choose our VPC because we are going to create the subnets inside this VPC ranges. So subnet name. So here let's create the private subnet first. So let's give it a name private A availability zone. So we have A, B, C, D in North Virginia region. So let's choose A. That is fine. And now, so as we already discussed that we have already assigned slash 26 as a VPC CIDR range. So now we will categorize or we will uh, create the subnets based upon our VPC ranges. So as we have total 64 IPs available in this VPC range, so we will categorize our IPs 16 IPs each per subnet. So we have focused to create four subnets now. So 16 IPs, which will stands for 64 IPs. So that's fine. So let's give it the range for the first subnet. So we will create the subnet with slash 28, which means that our first range will start from 0 to 15 in that particular range. So private A is fine, then create subnet. So next again we'll create the subnet which will be private B. Let's choose the preference B, and again we'll give the range to the subnet which will be like starting with 16 to 28. So this will be our second subnet, which will be the private one. So we created the subnet. So let's again go to create subnet and create the public ones. Public C, let's give it a name C, and let's, for example, give it the range in East C. Let's specify the range. So it will be starting from 32. Okay, this looks good. Create the subnet. Now let's create the last one. So it will be public D, and the range would be 48/28. Okay, So let's check the whole list now. So we'll click on the name, and now we can see that we have this 4 subnets created, 2 for private and 2 for public. Okay, so now let's move to the next section, which is route tables. To give it a name, so we'll give a name public RT. So we will create 2 route tables, one for public subnets and one for private. Let's create another one, create route table. So private route table. We need to select our VPC, tags are fine, create route table. So we have created 2 route tables here. You can see public and private. So now, we have to assign the public and private route table to our subnets. So route tables are used to manage the flow of the networks or calls from our VPC, or we can say the subnets. So we have categorized our VPC into 2 parts, the public subnet and the private subnet. So accordingly, we are having 2 route tables, one for private one and one for public. So you can see one option here. So there are no subnet associated as of now with this route tables, right? So in this case, if we do not associate any subnet, so the default one having the yes option will be treated as a main route table for all our networking flows. Okay, so please do remember that whenever we are creating the route tables for our corporate uses and client specific work, so we properly define these stuffs. Okay, so now let's proceed and let's assign the route tables with the specific subnets. So first we'll go with the public one and we'll click on the subnet associations here. Let's scroll it down. We have edit subnet associations. So we'll select the public ones, public C, public D. Okay, save associations. Okay, so now you can see we have 2 subnets here for public one. So in the same way, we will go for the private one. Subnet associations, edit subnet associations, and select the private ones. Save. Okay, so now we are fine with the route table entries. So next step is to configure the route tables or our subnets with proper requirement. When we say proper requirement, which means we have categorized our networking part with 2 categories like private and public. So accordingly, we have to manage the network, right? So whenever we say like public route table or public subnet, it is meant that the number of services or instances, whatever we have in that particular subnet,
कल का
will
रोटी भी
talk to
है
internet. Okay, and that will be
रोटी दो
for public interface.
कल की
So
बनाई
for
रोटी
that
भाई
purpose, let's create the public interface for our AWS networking part. So in AWS, we have an option called Internet Gateway, which is used to manage the public interface. So you can see by default we have a Internet Gateway. So we'll create our own Internet Gateway. So let's create Internet Gateway and give it a name my IGW, and let's create the Internet Gateway. Okay, so we created the Internet Gateway and now we have to attach this Internet Gateway to our VPC. So attach to VPC and we'll select our VPC, my VPC, attach internet gateway. So now our internet gateway is attached to our VPC. Okay, so internet gateway is present. So let's now configure our internet gateway with our route tables. Okay, so if you remember, we have a public route table. So internet gateway is basically for public interface. So we'll go on routes and we'll configure the internet gateway here with this public route table. So we'll click on edit routes, we will add a route. So we'll say for all and we'll select our internet gateway here. So you can see we are getting one option of my IGW and we'll click on save changes. So our public route table has now the internet interface. So now it can talk to internet, the global one. Okay. So this part is fine. In the same way, we will configure our private network configuration. Okay. So you might have heard the concept NAT. So NAT gateways are used to configure our private calls or the transmission of the network configuration for private subnet ranges. Okay, so for example, if you are having a banking website, so you might be having like additional or marketing kind of a page, and that can cover the public interface part. And apart from that, you have some user ID or the login part for that website, which takes you through to the private application layer. Okay, so that part is usually created under private subnet ranges, right? Because those are sensitive, or if we have some database related stuff that we can also manage under private subnet ranges. So we have a concept called NAT gateways, which uh, securely configure your uh, internet related configuration for the private subnet ranges. So if you remember, for the public route table entries, we configured our internet gateway. So for private subnet ranges, we will do the same stuff but with a secure manner. So NAT gateways provide this feature to securely use the internet for our private subnet resources. So let's configure the NAT gateway. So we'll click on create NAT gateway. We'll give it a name, MyNet subnet. So this is basically an important part in creating the NAT gateway. Usually we create the NAT gateway in the public subnet. So you remember we have two public subnets created, public C and public D. Let's choose the public C one. Connectivity type is public, it's fine. Elastic IP allocation ID. So we need to allocate a elastic IP for NAT. So create NAT gateway. So now the NAT gateway is created, and in the same way, we will have to attach this NAT gateway to our private route table. So let's go to route tables, click on private route table, routes, edit routes, and add route. So if you remember, we did the same stuff for public route table. In the same way, we will select the NAT, and yes, we got the option here to select. Now save changes. Yep, so NAT gateway is configured now. So yep, we are done with our basic network configuration on the AWS networking topics. So let's summarize. So first we created a VPC with the name my VPC for specific ranges. Then we created subnets. So for subnets part, we created like four subnets, two for private and two for public. So this is for a demo purpose. You can have it as per your choice and availability zone. Uh, so now let's move to the next part. Then we created the root table entries. So we created two root tables, one for private, one for public ranges. So we make it as a main root table, the public one. Then we created internet gateway with the name My Internet Gateway, and we attached it to the public root table. In the same way, we also created NAT Gateway, and we have given the name My NAT Gateway, and we have attached My NAT Gateway to our private root table. So, yeah, that's all for now. So that's all for today's session. We will bring another video for you to understand the AWS concepts. So thank you.